Oi, oi. How you
Oi,
doing?
oi.
Back
Oi,
in
oi,
home?
James. Yes, I'm back in Belize. I'm back in the jungle. As you can hear, all the
Mm.
birds chirping again. So, yeah, I'm back in the jungle.
You're interviewing Christian Hill and Jennifer Washington, director and producer of
Exactly.
this new excellent film about the history of Detroit techno. Although you could say it is techno because they do go deep into the roots, but mainly, and I think that's a very important point because there's been a lot of talk. God, by the way, a film called God Said, Give 'Em Drum Machines. But what is interesting is that there's been a lot of talk. I've seen this online. I've seen a lot of people get quite incensed, as people do, about no, Detroit comes from here, 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 and this was the pioneer. And there is a narrative that three people were the main guys from Detroit techno. That is Juan Atkins, Kevin Saunderson, and Derek May. I don't think that can be
Exactly.
taken away, right? But you have to understand narratives are formed, but everyone plays their part. I mean, and they talk about that, I think, nicely in the film. Fantastic archive footage. They talk about roots, people like Kraftwerk. I think Yellow Magic Orchestra. Everything seems to be covered in that film. Amazing archive. So, but it centers on Detroit because,
hmm
let's be honest, Detroit is a key part of the techno story, right?
Oh, for sure. Big time. Yeah. For me personally, you had bands like Kraftwerk and like New Order experimenting, of course, with all the new technology. But to me, Detroit is where it all kind of solidified, where all these different music
Mm,
styles
mm.
were infused into it. And this whole new music style, to me, was created that really started like the acid house scene and techno. And to me, that still was, I don't know, still ground zero for me personally. And then it just get, and of course, it's always bouncing backwards and forwards. It goes from Europe to the States, from the States to Europe, and everyone
Yeah,
adds their own
yeah.
little bit. But I think what happened in Detroit at that time was incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think there's some really lovely angles, which again is touched on in the film. Like the first time this trio they come to England, basically, I think there was a couple of magazines that were very pivotal in garnering attention to this. Was Record Mirror and the Face magazine. Face did an amazing piece on it. I can't remember forgive me, who the was it Neil Rushton who wrote the piece? I can't remember. My brain's gone a bit
I can't
whooshy.
remember.
But anyway, there was a fantastic piece in the Face, and these guys come over and they're blown away by what's going on in the UK. And it's fascinating to see that whole story, sort of discussed from their point of view.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a friend of mine who's from the US, who's really very much into electronic dance music, when I mentioned Detroit to him, he just looked at me like, what's a what's so interesting about Detroit? And when I mentioned these names, he
Mm,
didn't even know them. He was like, "Oh, but I thought techno came
wow.
from Europe." Like, no idea. Which to me, it was like, what? So it's kind of interesting how in Europe we look at the US and say that techno and house and all these music styles were to a large extent created there, whereas in the US they're looking at Europe and go, no, it came from Europe. So it's quite interesting how the different perceptions.
And of course, remember our trip there? I think we went there in '98, and we managed in that weekend. We've got to dig out this tape. There's a little clips of it in this documentary. But in a weekend, I remember this. We filmed, and you were incredible because you were doing all the interviews. About 30 of the who's who in techno. Pretty much everyone. We
Yeah,
got all the three. We did a
yeah.
special with Kevin Saunderson, which hopefully we're going to revisit again in a few weeks. But Derek May, Juan Atkins, Eddie Flashing Folks, Kelly Hand. I think we interviewed Mad Mike, the dude with the shoes who had that. Do you remember that crazy place
The
where all the shoes were hanging
Heidelberg
from
project, I
trees and
think that
stuff?
was called.
That was it. That
Heidel,
was it. Good call.
right? Yes, that was
Very
funny.
nice. 30 interviews. Uh,
Yeah.
that was that lovely RIP lady, Laura Gavor, who was like our kind of showing us around. But I remember this thing with Mike Banks. I mean, going into his like bunker record shop, and he's got like, I mean, I don't think I'm wrong in saying this. He had some interesting stuff under the counter that would kind of scare you. I won't say what it
What?
was in case he gets into trouble.
What? guns in America. You're allowed to have guns, so
Yeah,
we can say
you are,
guns.
but I don't know if you're allowed so many or what they're. Okay, of
And
course you can say
this
it, but
is
I don't want to,
many, 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 many years ago. No, a lot of Americans have a lot of guns and don't really think anything
Well,
of
there was
it.
a lot
So,
of heavy, hardcore weapons there, and then brandishing all these guns and like, how come MTV or you didn't come here 10 years ago? And it's like, well, I was about 8, firstly, and we didn't have a budget, and we're here. We are here to document techno,
yeah, it
just
was
like these
amazing.
producers and directors. But I think we did a good job there.
And to me, I don't know. There is just a magic to Detroit musically, and it's so hard to put
Mm,
your finger on it. I have never been in a place like it, and I mean, we've traveled around the world. We've been in amazing places and met amazing musicians, but I have never experienced that deep passion and understanding of music and music history, and it just, unless you've been there, and I've heard other people say this who've been to Detroit, who say, if you really want to understand this music style, you ought to go to Detroit. You ought to experience it, because seeing it on TV or listening to it
correct.
through a podcast, it still can't do it justice.
It's like many things I said, sorry, it's a shameless sort of plug about my archive, the world's largest magazine collection. You can see videos, you can see pictures, you can see it all until you come and touch those magazines and fit. But definitely, let's just push that to one side. Detroit, you've got to be in that environment. Do you remember that amazing? It was like a car park that was all this
Oh,
demolished and destroyed, and it was like, wasn't it like amazing chandeliers? Derek May took us around this
oh,
whole, we went and saw
in
those places, and that has so much impact on the whole, the vibe, how people
yes,
make the music, how people live. So
I
you have to
think
be
it
in it,
was
like
like an old.
Motown.
Yeah, that was Detroit, of course. Yeah, there was like it
Of
was an
course,
old theater, I think, which was now a car park. I mean,
that's
just
it.
insane.
That's it.
Although apparently Detroit has gone through, a whole makeover recently, especially downtown, and it's been gentrified. So that'll be quite interesting
Yes,
to see as well. Is that vibe still alive or not, and how does it affect the next generation of musicians? And it'd be really interesting to talk to these two people, and
it's
yeah, listen
true.
to
It's
their
true. It's like the
experiences.
struggle. It's like just going back to that point you said, just very interesting. A lot of this music, like I was listening to another podcast today actually. Our mutual friend Steve Blame interviewing Dave Durrell, which is a must listen. It's very funny. It's very good. He comes out with one quote. I've got to quote it very quickly, and then I will leave you to do your interview. But Dave Durrell, I mean, check this for a quote. Him talking about punk, right? Him getting into punk, and you know how it was all DIY, like techno, all this
Yeah.
stuff. Here we go. This is him talking about living when punk is breaking through. I would ride around our council estate in central London on my rally racer bike in a Marks and Spencer's plastic bag as a top. That's what happened in punk. You imagine him. He's literally got a Marks and Spencer plastic bag on him, running around. I love it. But punk, like with techno, it was DIY. Yeah, go out and do it.
Ah, funny. Yeah. No, things were very DIY.
Yeah,
But it seems these days everything's been gentrified. Even clubbing has been gentrified, everything. And so how does that
correct.
affect
Yeah,
the
yeah.
sound of music? Um, but of
That's what
course
I
now
meant. The
people have a
struggle.
lot
They had a
more.
struggle, right? They had the struggle. So,
Right.
Motown, there was that struggle of your environment, of race, whatever, privilege, everything now. Is there still that sort of, I'm sure for individuals, but that feeling, punk was a reaction to society, techno was a reaction to society, acid house. Is
Yeah.
that still so much in music? Is there so much of that sort of aggressive struggle and reaction to what's going on in society?
There's plenty going on in society that young people can get angry about and kick against. So maybe when it comes to that, we'll still get some good
Yes,
music
but they've
coming
all,
through.
yeah, yeah, but you'll get the good music. But everyone's got those tools. I mean, literally, I said it again to Dave Durrell today. We've all got this, so this can
Hmm.
do everything. And again, the quote, just one last quote from the Sunday Times magazine, 26th of August. This is 2017, 5 years ago. Mark Andreessen, the guy who invented whatever Netscape browser. This is the quote that kills me, and you don't get more techno than this. Okay, for a quote.
Go on.
This is what I mean. We've all got this now. The 600. This was said 5 years ago. The $600 iPhone in your pocket is a Unix supercomputer that cost $30 million 25 years ago. Both are exactly the same. So this thing here is a $30 million instrument. Just remember that. Remember the power you have in your hands from techno.
Techno, 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 techno.
Techno. See? That's equally powerful. As Ray from Too Unlimited would testify, you're very funny. Have a good interview.
Oh,
Big up your
yes.
COCK. Yeah? And
Yes,
report back.
James. I will do. I will do. Thank you.
All right.
So this is it. You have made the right choice. You've tuned into the Party Zone, and a very special Party Zone indeed. It was the show that we filmed in Detroit, and I have to say I'm so lucky that I had the chance to go to Detroit to meet all these big artists from the past, the present, and the future. All these guys that have made a form of music that has just changed the whole music scene forever. I mean, mainstream artists have been influenced by them. Look at big festivals like the Love Parade. You hear the music in adverts. I mean, governments even had to bring in legislations to stop techno parties. Of course, that's what I'm talking about, techno. And to educate you, we've got this for you. Enjoy.
Kristian Hill and Jennifer Washington. We've got the producer and the director of the God Said Give 'em Drum Machines movie. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
having
us,
us.
Simone.
So, Jennifer, maybe I'll start with you. So, the movie is about the Detroit techno scene. And I think what we need to do for the listeners who are not so familiar with Detroit itself, to give them a little bit of background information. So, can you maybe give us a bit of a history lesson of Detroit? You know, where exactly is it in the US and what's its history? So, the history of the city, and then parallel the history of the music leading up to techno. Don't touch the techno yet, but just what came before.
Wow. Thank you, Simone, for having us on here. I really appreciate the fact that we finally got connected. Um, this question is like something that, was asked of us, um, basically, what was this space like before techno got here? And that is another reason why it took us so long to make this film, because we couldn't just start talking about techno music without giving all that context.
Right.
So I would say, going back and doing that research and including, um, you know, the Great Migration, including the talk about Motown, to include all the blues and jazz that was going on in the Midwest, coming from the South, was just such a crucial piece of context and history that we just had to include. And I really feel like that's what it took to really be able to for anyone to understand and appreciate what techno is. Even if you may think you don't like it, it really comes from this soulful Black background, and I think that's what's really important to know about this music and this film as well.
Right. Christian?
I mean, just over the years, Detroit has been known as a art, architecture, and design hub. In addition to the music, I mean, the city at one point in time was one of the largest cities in America due to I guess, the auto industry. And the auto industry's kind of rise at the time made Detroit kind of like this jogger, what we thought was a juggernaut, and then like in the 70s you had like the I want to say the OPEC oil crisis. You had like imports, cars, and so as the auto industry began to kind of like turn down, the population got smaller. So like cities like Chicago, Chicago, which was always like our sister city, but Chicago kept moving, as a bigger hub, and Detroit kind of got hit by, I want to say, by population decline. And at one point in time, there were over 1 million people in Detroit. Now it's less than 700,000. So I guess me and Jen are a part of that exodus, but just over the years that Detroit has kind of been hampered a little bit by the loss of population and kind
Right.
of how it was hit by industry.
And the loss of work, I mean, at that point,
Yes.
because yeah, so basically for those people in Europe or other parts of the world, so Detroit, you're kind of right at the top, like very north in
Mm,
America. You got
yes. Thank you.
Canada right across the water, right? You can
Yes.
stand in
I can
Detroit and
stand and look at Canada.
look at
Yes.
Canada.
Hmm.
And so it was really the automobile industry that got a lot of people from, was it from the south as well, like a lot of
Yes.
black
Yes. Yes.
Americans moved to
Hmm.
Detroit at that point because
Hmm.
of the auto
Hmm.
industry and brought all their music with them, right? All the different styles
Oh,
from
they
all
brought all
around the
their
nation.
culture. Yes. Yes. Brought all their
Right.
culture and kind of art with them. And, you know, that that early creative class, goes back right to the turn of the century. And I mean, you had early musicians like out of the Scott Joplin era that, were playing, I want to say, ragtime and things of that nature. So the music in Detroit goes back, and having musicians of noteworthy musicians, goes all the way back to the turn of century in Detroit. So,
Yeah.
you know, to see where we are today, where we have electronic music, there's no question that even today we would have these type of contributors to culture, coming from our city.
Yeah. Always been a melting pot.
Yes, always been a melting pot, akin to New Orleans in the South, or akin to Nashville with country music. Detroit has always been a hub for soul music, and always been a hub for Black American culture.
So the two of you were both born in Detroit. How did you meet?
At the
Uh,
club. No, I'm just
that's not true at all.
no, I'm
Um,
joking.
I've been in Los Angeles since the early 90s. And when I moved from Detroit to Los Angeles, I ran in a circle of many Detroiters, and I lived on Detroit Street. And so it was a big social group, and we had a lot of parties. And basically, we were part of that scene out here in Los Angeles. So then, cut to 2010, we were both in Detroit at the same time. I was attending one of my high school reunions. I went to Cass Tech, and we bumped into each other at Eastern Market at a house party on a Saturday night, and we started this conversation. And you know, that was 12 years ago.
So whose idea was it to start working on this project?
I think we were thinking alike, at the same time. Christian can speak to what he was doing in Detroit at the time, but I had just come from visiting the first techno museum in the world. A friend of mine took me to Exhibit 3000, the submerged headquarters on East Grand Boulevard, and I was blown away because I didn't ever really think that this music that I grew up, in love with was now known as techno. I just didn't know that, and so it was news to me, and it just, you know, it was that weekend that I kind of like, experienced this revelation and just realized just how dope this was and how something needed to be done about this because you know you know in the 90s, we just thought of this techno as just being something else, not this soulful. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just baffled that you are
Yeah,
from Detroit. You would dance into this music, and all this time you didn't quite realize like
I didn't
what it
know.
was, or did you know Detroit's history? Like, did you understand like everything that you learned from doing a movie? Did you know that beforehand?
Beforehand, I mean, we were listening to the radio. We were listening to the radio, and whatever was in the mix show is what, we were dancing to. And so I didn't really know the most of these names, the names of the songs, the names of the artists. I really didn't know that they were homegrown. I had no idea until 2010. And so I'm, wandering into this party, this house party in the Eastern Market. I'm just like, blown away. And I'm like, wow, this is a big deal. Why don't more people know about this? Enters
Wow.
Kristian Hill, director, editor, filmmaker, and then that's kind of how the conversation started. But Kristian was already working on some things, and I'll let him talk to that. But that's kind of how it got started.
Yeah. Well, I've known about this. The day that Jen and I met up, we were talking about this. So I was like, "Yeah, I know these guys, and I've grown up around this culture of dance music in Detroit all my life."
Mhm.
Going back as far as as being 8 years old, I met Juan Atkins, who is credited for coining the term techno music,
Mhm.
and shoot, it just like kids in New Orleans gravitate to brass band instruments. In Detroit, we gravitated to turntables and drum machines and samplers, all kind of I guess, in response to how this music was beginning to penetrate our ears, and we were beginning to hear this sound, and how this sound was beginning to affect us, because it was a lot of things happening at the time. You were having the birth of house music, you were having the birth of hip hop, and in Detroit, we were having the birth of our scene, which is now known as techno. But in
Yeah.
the beginning, it really didn't have we weren't necessarily calling it anything. It was just,
Right.
uh, uh, what do you call it? A gumbo of music that a gentleman by the name of Mojo was serving up to us on a nightly basis. And so
Right,
with the,
Mojo,
we're,
very
mm-hmm,
important radio
mm-hmm,
DJ. Everybody seems to
mm-hmm,
talk about this guy. Tell me about him.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And his legend matches his impact. The impact that he had not only on myself and Jen and the people in other Detroiters, but that impact kind of carried over into Canada as well. Because again, this music and it's carrying over into Ohio and parts of this Midwest area where where our radio signal is kind of hitting people. So Mojo just was able to go ahead.
Yeah,
He was
so
just able to tell. Go ahead. Sorry.
so Mojo, just for people who don't know him, so he was playing a wide variety of music, really
Yes.
exposing people to music that they had never heard before. He
Yes.
was not scared to grab brand new acts here and there, and really expose a large audience to people who never would have been able to break through otherwise. Kind of like John Peel did in the UK. This is what
Mm.
Mojo did for your part of the nation. Am I right?
Yes, yes, and thank you for clarifying that for you. Sometimes, just how we know Mojo, maybe what doesn't translate because we know him so well. But yes,
Mhm.
Mojo would introduce us to all types of music within his set. As I just heard my friend Reggie Doak say, he would play Beethoven. The Beethoven would go into Parliament. The Parliament would go into Kraftwerk. Then he might play Queen. Like, it was just all this range of music, and because of that kind of like range of music that he would deliver, as a kid or as a young teenager, you were just fascinated and you would stay up all hours of the evening in order to hear this music. And
Yeah.
so he was the first one to kind of have you turn your porch light on. Don't say damn, say whoa, say whammy whoa. Like he said, if it gets too crazy, tie a knot. Don't let go. Don't say damn, say whammy whoa. Like he had all of these sayings that were kind of mantras for life. And Mojo introducing music to us in that way just has stuck with me and many Detroiters for years.
And so there were the Belleville Three, right? The ones who are the most famous kind of techno pioneers. They were also very much inspired by what they were hearing on the radio, the stuff that Mojo was playing,
Yeah, but
right?
we don't say Belleville 3.
Okay,
Like
all
that's
right.
that is that's kind of where the legend, and even in the film, that's where the legend in the film go in two different directions.
Okay, so let's just mention so who we're talking about when we say
Mhm,
that name. So we're talking about
mhm,
Juan Atkins, Derek
mhm,
May, and Kevin Saunderson.
mhm.
Those
Which is
guys
which
went to school together. They went to Belleville High School or something, right? And they were
Yeah,
friends.
yeah. But once we start to like, well, this is for later on in our conversation. But yes, Juan, Derek, Kevin, all went to high school together. But Eddie, Blake, and Santonio also played a
Right.
role in kind of cementing this culture for us. And so when we talk about the Belleville Three, that's kind of where it seems that history has kind of separated these guys. And so we like to talk about the Techno Six, or we just like to talk about it in a way that's a little more inclusive of the other contributions.
Well,
Not that these three guys aren't the most known out of them, but the film kind of talks about reasons why that is the way it is.
right, but I think that's actually like you said, that's actually very fair of your movie. It's so easy to just look at the ones who are still kind of famous today, and because there's certain ones because of decisions they've made or whatever who didn't really reach that. And I think it's quite fair, like what you guys are doing, to make sure that they get the limelight too in this movie.
No, that is I mean, that's been the goal. Once Eddie folks introduced me to Kevin Saunderson, and he introduced me to Blake and Santonio, and then we came across the cover magazine where they all six of these guys are on the cover, and taken by a photo taken by a gentleman by the name of Norman
Normsky,
Anderson in
yes,
the UK,
yeah,
who uh who we love. Once we figured out this whole crucible of connection, then it was kind of like, oh, this thing is bigger than the Belleville Three. And before there was the Belleville Three, it was actually these six guys.
yeah.
And so how we go from these six guys to the Belleville Three is a little of what we get into in the film.
Right. Yeah. So the film definitely it does focus a little bit on that picture, right? It takes that picture and then starts telling the story of all these different
Hmm.
characters that are in that picture.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
that's definitely that took years to figure out, but once we figured it out, we leaned into it.
Yeah.
And once we leaned into it, and then over the pandemic got the opportunity to interview Norman, uh it just all came together. The our idea to interview Norman Anderson actually came about in 2016 when we
Wow.
met, but it took us till 2020 to get the interview. So again, this is a process. These moments that you see in the film are is a process of us learning about this music and about the people who helped illustrate this music. So yeah.
So how long has it taken to make this movie in total? Long time.
Yeah, yeah. God said give them drum machines took 12 years to make. At w-
Oh,
at one point in time, it was called the Detroit Sound Project, and then
right.
that morphed into Techno Mecca. Techno Mecca then gave way in 2013 to God said give them drum machines. So from 2013 to 2022, we've been promoting God said give them drum machines.
Wow. Why did you think it was important that the world knew about Detroit and its role in techno, the rise of techno and electronic music?
I mean, for so many reasons. When we started this was like pre-bankruptcy. For those of you that don't know, Detroit went through a bankruptcy in the 2013, I think, and it was a very sad, dark time for the city. Living in Los Angeles, I just, was just kind of tired of seeing all this bad news, in the news about Detroit. I just felt like, you know, we need to do something. I felt like that. I wanted to do something to help my city. How can this happen? And so I wasn't even a filmmaker at the time, but I was in love with music documentaries. And I started to see how just like how big documentaries were getting and how impactful they could be and how they could really change
Hmm.
our life experience and culture. And so after Searching for Sugar Man, um, in 2012, which became an Oscar winner, I just saw how amazing, um, how they represented Detroit. It was about a musician from Detroit by the name of Rodriguez, who really never got his proper recognition as being this awesome artist back in the 60s, until basically it's taken 20 years for all the dots to be connected to see that this guy who never really thought he you know w- was a success really was in other parts of the world. And so in South Africa, he became a legend, and he didn't really know about that until 20 years later. So after seeing
Wow.
that story, it just kind of like really inspired me. And the next thing I know, I'm meeting Christian Hill, and I'm going to the Detroit Techno Museum, and just the stars started to align, and I realized that this is what the city needed, this type of spotlight, this type of recognition. This story was so amazing and so dope that, because I mean, this is just like what happened with rock music. It happened rock and roll, it happened with rock and roll, it happened with blues, it happened with jazz, and these you know um, true original American art forms, start off, looking one way, on the backs of Black artists.
Right.
And next thing it gets, transformed. And then we have no idea, how, these things get started. And so I knew that
Right.
this was special and this was important, and that, the record needed to be set straight. So after talking to Christian, just, it just all made sense.
You are right. I mean, because history does repeat itself, doesn't it? I mean, this is quite a common theme that you're mentioning, where you have certain black musicians who come with very inventive ways of creating a music style, and they have a certain level of success, but then quite often the white musicians will come along, and quite often they become the face of it. And I
Yeah,
don't think I don't think it's anyone
no,
means bad necessarily, but it
no,
does
no.
quite often happen.
Yeah, yes, and it's not. I mean, I like to look at it of what they call refractions. Like, so
Yeah.
people, you hear something, you're influenced by it, and you
Right.
take that influence and you put it into your own
Yeah.
creativity, and that then comes out, right? So that's how I look at it, and not necessarily from the standpoint of like there's some evil plan,
No.
for this to happen.
No. No.
And
No.
that's how we approached it in the film, and trying to basically show that just influence happens, and once influence happens, popular culture, dominant culture, sometimes takes it and frames it in a way that works for them.
Yeah,
you know.
because I mean, and again, it goes backwards and forwards because in your movie as well, you do talk about the fact that these black musicians were inspired also by Kraftwerk, New Order, these kind of, white European bands. So it goes different ways, but they
Yeah.
definitely added something in Detroit, something new got added as far as I'm
Mhm.
concerned. I love my
Mhm.
dance music. I love,
Mhm.
I was big into the whole acid house,
Mhm.
early rave scene, and they did bring something new. And I think it was the blending of all these different styles. Whereas the early techno, or not the early electronic music from Europe, to me was a little bit cold, a little bit too robotic almost. And then they added a little bit of soul to it, a little bit of gospel-y, like all these things were
Mhm.
blended into it. And yeah, I think it is important that they get the rightful credit for that in a
Yeah.
way.
And more importantly, that's when it became a genre. After
Right.
Juan coined it, they did the record mirror cover,
Mm.
then it was cemented into being a genre. That's another reason why this is so important, is
Yeah.
that without what happened in Detroit, if that didn't happen, then we wouldn't have techno as we know it.
No, it'd be an extension of house music, and which is cool. I mean that, and really, that's as Mike Banks says that techno is sometimes messed up house music. You know what I mean? So there were all of these kind of I want to say inventions or ideas around music that had more intention that made it different than house. Like so, Juan and Derek's and Kevin and all of these guys, Santonio, Eddie, Blake, they had a different intention, you know. And I think just over time, that's what made this music more unique than maybe what was happening in the early electronic music scene, you know, that they were able to add some elements of, like you said, soul and gospel and poetry to it that
Yeah.
didn't exist prior.
And I think it's because of that very rich musical history that Detroit has that all this stuff got blended together. I have noticed online and social media and stuff, there is also a big backlash where people seem to get very wound up about the fact that. They say that techno came from Detroit. They're like, it didn't come from Detroit. It came from Europe, and they get really wound up. I don't know why they get so
Mhm,
wound up about it because from
mhm,
where I'm standing, it didn't look like you guys were denying that these guys were influenced by what happened in Europe. But
mhm.
I mean, what's your feeling on that? Why do people get so wound up about this?
Because it's cultural currency. Like, and so, like, just over the years, like the story of, techno and, just kind of African American contributions to music are just the underground, because some of this music does come from the underground, the LBGT community, and just
Hmm.
kind of all there's a lot kind of in this underground bubble that people don't want to give credit to.
Right.
And we kind of look at the whole it started in Germany thing as erasure. So it's a way to kind of not even deal with the fact that, you know, this music may have come from somewhere else. And so just when we bring that up, it's sometimes it's even an issue. So I'm glad you see this, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's just something that we've had to deal with in making the film. Like even that's why we've had to lay the film out the way we did, so that people can kind of see that from our standpoint, it's this is the only place that this music could have come from.
Yeah. So, actually, in one of the podcasts, because there's also a podcast that goes with the
Hmm.
movie, it's got all the first letters of the God Said Give 'em Drum Machine. So GSG.
GEDM, yes.
Right. Great podcast, by the way. Everyone, go have a listen. I loved it. I've been listening to some of the episodes. And there was someone on there who said that the difference between the US and Europe. And he said in Europe they consume art in a more scholarly way
Mm,
than they do in the US. Is that in the US it's more things need to be a little bit more obvious. So the movies have got big
mhm,
explosions, everything's kind of very commercial in a way, whereas in Europe things are a little bit more arty. And he said that therefore Europe got it quicker
mm,
than America does, and also that in Europe we are very aware of, for instance, Detroit's part in the rise of techno, the development of electronic dance music.
mhm,
And even when I speak to friends from the US, I'm baffled that they don't even know their own music history.
mhm.
It's weird, right?
Yes, it's very weird. It's go ahead.
Because we
Yeah,
know.
that's
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why yeah, we're doing this, and we saw that when we traveled to London, we traveled to Berlin, we traveled to Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, we traveled to Cape Town, South Africa, and Japan, and all these places. We got to see firsthand how aware and accepting of this type of music and popular it is, everywhere else, except here, definitely doesn't, mean anything here in Los Angeles, you know,
weird.
especially. And even how it's like, recognized in Detroit is a problem to me. And so, instead of just sitting around and complaining about it,
Yeah.
we just decided to do something about it.
And don't you think as well it's really important for the next generation? I always think that, kids need to have examples, they need to have heroes that they can look up to, and preferably heroes that are very much like themselves. So people from their own city, people who look like them, people whose life reflects their life. And so don't you think as well for the young kids growing up, for instance in Detroit, it's very important that they are aware of, the legends that are among them.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. These guys are heroes. They should be honored and respected and learned about. And, they've set, they cleared a path,
Yeah.
for so many. And it's very important because they're like big brothers to me. I've learned so much from them. And I think that, that can happen for future generations. And that's why this story is important.
I mean, the film just in our screenings really resonates with kids in their 20s, people in their 30s, just because they're now learning of this. They're now learning of this history and learning of this music in a way that they could kind of see ownership in it.
Hmm.
That prior to this, some kids don't see any ownership in the techno. Like just you say techno to them, it brings up the German ownership and erasure that we talked about. But
Right.
once we show them this film, they also see that this is them.
Yeah.
That it's this film is kind of for younger people, and it's for people who are really kind of curious about just where this music that they love comes from.
So your movie has been screened or is about to be screened at the Tribeca Festival? Has it been
You know,
screened
we
already?
we screened at Tribeca this past June. We had three screenings. The first one being the world premiere. It was standing room only. Probably 400 people. It was in a event space. We've kind of it was an event space, so it was huge. And
Wow.
you know uh man, we got a standing ovation. It's just those type of things we'll never forget, in terms of screening this film in front of people for the first time and hearing their raw emotions throughout the film as if they were on a roller coaster ride. I mean, those are things that you know I'll never I'll never forget, and so uh we
Amazing.
had we had inner city perform at our inner city, and Blake Baxter perform at the rap party, which was an incredible performance afterwards. So people stayed. Tribeca did an excellent job of really highlighting our film and giving us the type of platform we need to take it into the next market. So yes.
Wow, that must have made the last 12 years all worth it, right?
Well, it might take me 12 years to figure out just how I really feel about what happened. But
What could you do with like COVID? You just had to roll with the punches, right? You just had to get through it. Yeah.
I mean, we did several interviews during COVID, and near the end, we were traveling doing interviews. I mean, we basically down the stretch did everything we could to get this thing on screen.
Yeah.
Even when we didn't even know where it was going to end up, we were working hard. Like a lot of time, it wasn't, even though we came we Tribeca is the portal in which we are coming into the world.
Hmm.
However, we didn't know what that was going to be, you
Yeah.
know. So we were once Tribeca gave us the word, then we had to kind of go into finishing the film mode. So it was a lot that even though they told us, let's say in February,
Hmm.
we knew in February or March, Jen, but we really only had from that moment on until screening to finish. 1 week
Wow.
before screening, we were delivering. You know what I mean? Like, so the film,
Talking about
the
a
film was
deadline.
still happening. Yes, 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 yeah. And they
Wow.
definitely had to call and give us a deadline. Yeah,
An
Wow.
extension, yeah.
an
My good.
extension for sure.
My goodness. And tell me about, so there's a big techno festival as well, right? That's really important in Detroit.
Super important because over 300,000 people come and attend over the weekend. They come to they come to Hart Plaza, which is the downtown in downtown Detroit. This is kind of any uh, a tourist location or whatever that they've uh, turned into the home for movement, which is it used to be called the Detroit Electronic Music Festival, a DIMF, and then before but that started. And it used to be a free festival. Now it's a pay festival, but that pay festival has people from all over the world coming to Detroit uh, for more in May from Memorial Day, and they come and celebrate the music in the city. You would never know beyond, let's say, Midtown, what's going on downtown, but downtown Detroit, everybody, all the locations are all kind of celebrating this music, and we have people from all over the world that come
Yeah.
and really enjoy themselves. And that gave us a platform to film like some of the best DJs in the world. And without Paxo House, like Paxo House actually gave us the early kind of legs to figure out how to do this film, because we would go there and film DJs and
Right.
interview DJs, make our connections. And it was just from there that we became more of a fixture within the kind of the media space around
Right.
this music.
Yeah, because there's clips of that on YouTube for sure. I've seen some of the clips of what you guys filmed there, or what you, Christian, definitely filmed there. Um,
Mhm.
so how does the whole techno community, like all the artists and stuff, how do they view what you've just done?
It's overall positive.
Right.
Overall positive. Definitely we shock people to a large degree, because nowadays when you go to the club or you go out, you see people with cameras filming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but you never know where that footage goes beyond, let's say, your Facebook feed or your YouTube channel. So yeah, we're me and Jen are the people you see in the club with the camera. You just don't know where that footage is going. And just we was able to turn it not only into God Said Give Them Drum Machines, but we made another film called Electric Roots. We also did several short films while making this film. So we were constantly using this footage Did you see people did you see, people would see us filming, and now we've turned those things into content and products that are in the marketplace. So
Yeah.
they're happy. The community is definitely happy for us, but I'm sure just like everybody else, they want to see the film.
Right.
They want to see it, and they want to see it in a larger context, and we're hoping to deliver that.
Right. Yeah. So we were filming, of course, in Detroit ourselves with the Party Zone. I don't
Hmm.
actually know, how did you guys find that material? Because not all of that is on YouTube. I think you guys have got little snippets of our old Party Zone material in the
Hmm.
movie. I don't even know where you found it, but it's really cool.
Well, archival, we had a few. Jen had an archival team with Jen,
Ah,
Mary, Masha Montage, and Nairi. And we had like a team that would just, their job was to go out and find stuff. And I
yeah,
would give them leads, but they would then go out and bring stuff back. And it was kind of our archival team that really helped us kind of take this film from being, just kind of a talking head piece to a historical doc
right.
that really lends credibility and lends to the story of how this music was actually created. And so without
Yeah,
that archival from Party Zone and things of that nature, we wouldn't have been able to really cement people into this culture and really show that it's been here for a long time.
yeah. I mean, when we arrived, I think it was '98 when we came,
Hmm.
and there was several of the artists who were basically looking at us, going, "Why are you only here now? Why didn't you come any sooner?" But we actually, before we couldn't, we didn't have the budget. This was the first time we could come, and I have to say,
Yeah,
to this day, it's still one of the favorite shoots I've ever done. It was incredible.
you were just sidebar. Were you a host
Yes,
on this?
yeah,
So yeah, we actually used to have you in the film. Like now that like, were you on camera? Were you
yeah,
on camera? Oh yeah,
yes.
we definitely at one point in time had you at the end of the film.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know.
yes,
So,
yes, 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 yes. So that Party Zone footage, now that you bring it up,
yes,
was very key to some of, yeah, because you came with MTV.
yes,
Is that?
yes, we did.
Yes, I do remember you now.
We
Ah,
did, and it was
yes.
quite funny because when we first arrived, I mean, some of the musicians, I can't even remember exactly who, but there was some who literally were kind of looking at us a little bit distrustful, like, are you guys like really into this thing? Do you know what you're talking about? Like, we really had to prove ourselves,
So
But
so yes, yes. So that experience you went through um was something that we had to go through by fire all the way up into premiere.
Hmm,
So it gets, like, you asked a question about what do people think. I mean, yes, what you just described was is how we have to walk through this even today.
hmm,
So even today, as much as in we are proven filmmakers in this space, or just in
yeah,
the space of documentary filmmaking, Jen and I are proven. And so but it took 12 years for that to happen, and now they probably look at us, differently, but just over the period of making the film all the way up until its birth, everybody looked at us skeptically and kind of still isn't sure what the hell we're doing.
right.
Mm, But thank you for bringing up the Party Zone footage, because yes, I I, I must say, where you might even been a ginger. You
I
might have
was,
had.
I was. I was constantly changing my hair color back then. So yeah, my hair was red. That's right.
Yes, yes, I
That's
do
right.
remember you. Yes,
Yes.
see, oh yeah, this is great because Yes, we used to have you at the end of the movie at one point in time.
Yeah, we interviewed about like 30 different people, I think, in a
Hmm.
space of I can't even remember how many days, but it was just bang, 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 bang. It was insane. And
Hmm.
the music and the DJing and everything that I experienced there, I cannot even put it into words. It's James and I, my producer, my MTV producer and I, we traveled around the world.
Hmm.
We've met all the great artists and DJs. Both of us have never experienced anything like what we did in Detroit. Just
Wow.
the level of just passion and expertise and knowledge and just absolutely inspiring. And then against the backdrop of at that point a very fallen down, just a wasteland of a Detroit, and then this music that blossomed out of it. It's an experience I'll never forget for the rest of my life.
What we're doing is like the 90s Motown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, I mean, back here, behind this building here, you got the Motown studios.
Right.
You know, and this is where everything happened. You got Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, all the guys, you know, New Temptations. And I mean, and so that gives us that sense of spirit of Detroit to let us continue on the tradition, whether it be electronic or acoustic or whatever. You know, music is a universal language, so we...
Got a lot of people think because they DJ for 3 years, they're a DJ. Oh, no, you got a lot of records, bro, to come back and then present. And let's see a DJ work a black crowd. And then when you come to doing parties, like you said, when you come to Europe and do parties, you got a crowd there. You ain't got to work it. So anybody can be a DJ. Come to my neighborhood and let people pay $5 or $7. They be ready to beat you up because you ain't making me dance. That's what I call a DJ. No.
There is something special about Detroit. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know what it is, but there is something.
Cheap property.
No,
That's
it's
what
not.
it is.
It's not.
It is.
No, but
It
it's.
Look,
There's something about the
where
vibe
can you buy?
here.
Where else can you buy a building that has 4 levels for $70,000?
What?
How much does it cost for a house in London?
You don't want to know. Wow, you can't even get a room for that, you know?
Hearing you talk now, I can't help but just see you interviewing all of them. And I mean, you had Kay Han, rest in peace. You had
Yes.
Terrence Parker, who I've known, who I've known of since I was in high school. You had Stacy Pullen.
Yes.
You had uh,
I mean,
Alan Oldman.
everyone.
They had everybody. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that footage. And of course, like you said, we used it. But I'm definitely fascinated by meeting you again and kind of readjusting my focus to now be like, oh, I can now see you with the long lens. This isn't just like
Yes.
a up close picture. I know that your love for this music and your understanding of this culture goes back a
Oh yeah.
long way. So
Yes.
thank you for taking time to watch the film. It means a lot, you know.
Well, thank you for making it, both of you. Thank you so much for making it. And just to end, just tell me for both of you, why techno? What does techno mean to you?
I think it's, I don't know, it's ultimate cool music to me. Ultimate music, movie music to
Mhm.
me.
I mean, techno for me is it's uh it's thinking beyond your borders. It's the soundtrack for going beyond your current what you currently see.
Mhm.
And when Juan and Kevin, Derek, Blake, and Santonio and Eddie started making this music, they didn't even know what they were doing. It was they were forced to have to kind of coin this term and put it on this music. But I would say I thank them for that. I thank Juan for that. I thank Rick Davis for that. I thank them because it's given us uh in Detroit a way to sonically kind of continue to kind of cover the world and heal the world the best way they can. And the way that these guys, this artisan class of DJs and producers, goes around the world every weekend to kind of administer this healing music. I'm just glad to be able to share how it all came about with people who are interested to know. So again, thank you so much.
It's provided like an extra heartbeat to the world that we all dance to
Mm.
together, right?
No,
All
extra
around the
hard.
world.
Yes, this music is for everybody, as Kevin says. This music is for everybody. So yeah, that's the feeling that we hope this film is for everybody. That in this music that's for everybody, we have this film that's for everybody, for them to learn just how or experience how much this music means to us. And that's us, like that's us on the phone, like that's all the techno lovers, like this music. And it's just a grand opportunity to share this information with people, and we treasure and we truly appreciate the honor of being able to share this story. And we took the time. We took 12 years because we wanted to make sure that it was right. So
Well, thank you both so much. I hope the movie becomes a huge success. So, everyone out there, watch out for God Said Give 'em Drum Machines. Go check out the podcast as well. And I'm looking forward to whatever comes next from you guys. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Simone.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
How'd it go? How was the Detroit thing? Tell me.
It was very enjoyable. I found them fascinating. I loved how it had taken them 12 years to make this movie. I mean, it's just
Wow.
insane. I'm sure they're not very happy about the fact that it took them 12 years to make the movie, but I just loved the level of dedication, that they stuck with it and got this thing done. And what I found interesting was that they struggled with the same thing that we struggled with at the time, and that was gaining the trust of these guys. I think so many of them have been burned through the years and have been, just maybe taken advantage of, not taken seriously, and so they really had to earn their stripes. And it's what we had to do all those years ago in the space of one weekend. And they had a longer time to do it, but they said even to this day they still constantly have to prove themselves and show that their intentions are
Well, hopefully this film speaks for
good.
itself. Yeah.
So right.
Hopefully that
And
film will
one
really get the
thing
trust.
we got, I'm sure. And one thing we got wrong, we were in Detroit in 1997, not 98.
So even better, even earlier.
Mm-hmm. And it's still a relevant and important story to tell, even to this day.
I look forward to the listen. Thank you very much.